right. Hello, Zoomcasters. It's Tuesday night, November 22nd, 2022, and it's time for another USA Hockey Officiating Program Zoomcast episode. Tonight's episode is episode 62, entitled Health and Wellness. We've done a lot of X's and O's, nuts and bolts types of topics. We've discussed judgment. We talked about different penalty infractions and stuff like that. And we've talked about some bigger and broader topics as they relate to the officiating community. When you think about whether you be the elite athlete official, like an official basically performing in our ODP program, or beyond that in the junior, professional, and international ranks, or even just the average official going out there and just being the best darn 12U or 14U youth hockey referee that they can be, and we're certainly happy that USA Hockey is so happy that those people exist. You know, it boils down to we're all a certain degree an athlete. All of us are athletes, and it's all about maintaining our body and maintaining our mind that ultimately gets us through the season and keeps us competing on a high level each and every time we go out there on the ice. For those of you who don't know me, I'm BJ Ringrose. I'm the manager of officiating education and development at USA Hockey. And joining me tonight is an elite level panelist, Cameron Gentile. Cameron is from the Charlotte, North Carolina area, been a USA Hockey official for 25 plus years, serving locally in an admin level as the evaluation coordinator for the entire Southeastern district. So built a really good off-ice career for himself, serving Jim Dewhurst and his group of staff out there on the admin level within the Southeastern district. And he's also contributed to various programs, seminars and training programs, most in particular the Southeast District Select Camp, which is an officiating camp that goes on out there in the Southeastern district every single year, basically catering to those officials who are trying to make the jump from the grassroots level. They're working their youth grassroots level games, but want to jump into one of our summer development camps like futures camps, or want to make a run at the ODP. You know, basically they're looking for that transition, and Cameron does a great job there. And what he does on a professional level, currently serving as a chiropractor, and that's a profession that basically he's been doing for about 6 to 7 years now. But before that, he was actually a sports performance coach for over 15 years. And within that profession, he was serving all levels of athletes. And that basically goes from kids all the way up to actually NFL players. Him coming from Charlotte, North Carolina, he was working with the Carolina Panthers organization and a lot of their athletes. So a wide array of knowledge of basically health and wellness, and as it relates to a wide degree of athletes. So Cameron basically gave a great presentation at that Southeastern District camp that I mentioned a little bit earlier, down this topic, and it just set off a lot of sparks and flags in my mind. Like, this would make a great episode. So Cameron, we're really happy to have you here. And first and foremost, being a health and wellness episode, how you feeling today?
You know, having a newborn and a bunch of work, I definitely need to practice what I preached tonight with some recovery. But other than that, feeling pretty good. I appreciate you having me.
You did definitely delve into my next question, because I am aware that you have a newborn baby girl, and I hope everything's going well there. How's fatherhood treating you?
It's doing really well. Yeah, I hope the bags under the eyes don't transfer too well on the video, but it's like they say, everyone says it changes your life, but it's a different perspective when you come home and see that little smile after a hard day. It makes it all worth it.
Well, I'm just doing a quick comparison between our two screens. I don't think your bags are any worse than mine, and I'll do what I can in the post edit to basically just kind of color some of that out, use a couple filters, and play around with some lighting and stuff. So
I appreciate
anyway, from a background perspective, what got you into this area of basically health and fitness and sport and dealing with elite level athletes?
You know, it started with my own profession. I just had a ton of injuries, and I couldn't figure out why. You know, worked out hard, pushed hard, and I kept finding myself always on the mend. And, you know, I was in school. I started as a mechanical engineer. This is not for me, being behind a desk, and I wanted to go into athletic training. And it started opening a lot of doors on, this is why you're hurt. You need to start working on prevention as opposed to waiting for the injury to happen. How can I build back, and how can I push hard again and keep grinding through? And it led me on a journey of how can I help other people? And it took me towards sports performance. You know, I've always had a passion for sports. We've always played. And, you know, we find an area where athletes are just getting so over-specified. And at the time that I was starting to come up in the profession, there was a great avenue to be able to help people train appropriately to maximize their performance so that they can actually get to where they want to be, where they can become the best athlete that they want to be. And it's kind of morphed and changed. I ended up the chiropractic route because that's what I kept referring to. We were able to get people better. We were taking the place of a lot of physical therapists. We were working with a lot of high-end athletes. We were starting to consult with different programs. And where we always ran into our end was we're having a disconnect here from a brain-body balance. And we started to refer out quite a bit to chiropractors. And I realized there was an opportunity to go in to broaden my scope to be able to help people, and jumped back into school at 33 years old and took on the challenge of being a student again.
Fantastic. It's great. Always being willing to learn new things. And I'm sure basically you learned a ton in your former career, but even with chiropractic, I'm sure it's a profession that basically you're finding yourself learning new things like a day in and day out and week in and week out.
Yeah, it's definitely unique. You know, they call it being in practice for a reason. You go through the schooling and you learn to read the x-rays, the MRIs, and the diagnostics, but it's when someone's sitting in front of you and they've been to 14 different doctors and can't get an answer why, and they're looking at you going, can you help me? You're constantly in the books trying to learn and find ways to be able to resolve their issues.
Okay. And just one more quick question before we dive into the presentation. You've worked obviously with all sorts of different athletes through all sorts of different sports and things like that. Was hockey always something that you were just always attracted to, or were there other sports that you worked with athletes in that you found like you really found a lot of fascination and interest in?
You know, hockey was always a good sub-interest because I've been doing it so long. I've been involved since I was 4 years old. But the athletic population that really drove my interest was actually your middle school, high school lacrosse player. It was such a great transitional sport where it brought in so many aspects of other sports that working with them really, as a coach, forced me to refine my tools because of the diversity of the sport, learning to use your hands with a lengthened pole, trying to figure out how we can get all that change of direction and coordinate. It was a nice crossover from hockey, but it was really a way for me to press my interest as a coach.
It's funny you bring up lacrosse. I actually played lacrosse for a little bit in middle school and high school, and even that transition into that sport, there are a lot of similarities between lacrosse and hockey. A lot of like just basically playing shorthanded due to a penalty and things like that. But the one thing that I never quite understood is basically you watch the average ice hockey game. God forbid you whack a player with your stick, and yet you go out there and watch a lacrosse game, and it's just midfielders basically just attacking attack players, just whacking them with their stick, and just something just doesn't seem right about that. But
No,
anyway,
it definitely doesn't. But great anger management if you play the sport, though, right?
never really thought about it that way. Anyway, you put together a great presentation for us tonight. So I'll just kind of sit back and let you dive into it. And just as a quick reminder to all of our participants out there in live Zoomcast land, if you have any questions or comments you want to share, feel free to use that Q&A feature within your Zoom menu there, or the chat feature. I'll be sitting here and kind of sitting back and monitoring all that. And we'll do everything that we can to basically ask your questions. So we really look forward to your engagement, and we look forward to Cam's presentation. And with that, take it away, Cam.
So let's dive into it. You know, today's presentation, health and wellness is a broad field, and we're going to kind of focus on recovery, indicators for recovery. You know, what are things that we can watch, or what are things that we can do to help us get from game to game? We just worked 5 games on the tournament weekend, and we're going to be able to get up and go to work and move on Monday. What are things that we can try to get through there? We don't dive too much into any one topic. This is a summary of what's usually an 8-hour presentation for continuing education. So we're going to give you some ideas to look into. Google is a great resource to find some things. It's also an unknown to be able to get you down a couple rabbit holes. But we're just trying to give a few overviews and try to express the importance of recovery and how it can help you in your performance. Let's get that pulled up for you. So taking a look at recovery allows us to do 2 things. We look at it in 2 different areas. One is on the micro level. How do I recover from what I just did? The workout I just had, the games I just did, the stressors that are presented in my life that I need to be able to get my headspace clear and recover to tackle on the next day. And that goes into number 1 here. It's the restoration of what we've lost, or the changes that we're trying to get done. How do we recover from that event? And then there's also a macro point to it of recovery, and it's the maximizing your body's ability to adapt. And it's looking at, I want to get ready for the season. I want to get faster. I want to get stronger. I want to be able to improve my skill set for something, whether it's to work state playoffs, regionals, nationals, whether you're trying to get to one of USA Hockey's select camps and you want to maximize your ability, recovery plays a very crucial role in how you development over the course of a long period of time. In fact, with most of our athletes that are at the high school level or higher, we're looking at periodization of their workouts for 12 to 24 months to be able to peak at certain events. And the most important variable in their success is how well do they recover, not what was the load or how we push through. So when we go through this, we're going to talk a little bit about the short-term recovery, and we're going to talk a little bit of how to look at your calendar on how can I schedule recovery into my lifestyle to be able to try to maximize my time over the course of a season. Now, before we get into recovery, we have to kind of do a little bit of conversation about stress. And I'm not going to read the bullet points to you. And after 2 slides of this much text, you won't have that much on any other slide. But it's important to understand stress. And a lot of times with physical recovery, we only think about the physical stresses. I went to the gym and I lifted. I skated 9 games over 3 days. Yeah, I went and I started running and I'm training for a 5K to be able to improve my endurance. What we don't look at is the mental, emotional fatigue that factors into it. And in the bold is where I thought this was the most interesting and where it really made me start looking at recovery in my athletes. Your body, specifically your nervous system and your endocrine system, which balances your hormones out, can't tell the difference on what caused the stress. It just knows that stress took place. And that becomes important on the long run of, I'll use myself as the example, run a business, see patients, do paperwork, going through a financial audit right now, having a newborn. That's a whole lot of stuff getting dumped on the body. My ability to perform or to adapt really relies on how well I can recover from those events from a mental standpoint, so that those markers that are constantly hitting my nervous system, my endocrine system, mellow out and my body can find balance again. And down there's a little example that comes in of, have you ever had an argument with your significant other and you get done and you're just like, holy crap, I'm tired, I'm worn out. And there's a physical response to the emotional event that you just went through. And it's important to take that into the calculations of, okay, why didn't that workout feel as good as it did 3 weeks ago? What are the other things that are dumping into your life to kind of affect that? And then we need to be able to deal with those stressors. And a big part of that is understanding our body a little bit. And your nervous system is broken down into the parasympathetic and sympathetic systems. In short, sympathetic is your fight or flight. It's what ramps you up. It gets your heart rate up. It gets your breath rate up. It gets your blood pressure up. We become more focused. It's a great thing in short doses. However, most of us are just constantly driving that sympathetic nervous system, stressors at work, stressors at home, hanging out and going, man, I'm a Rangers fan. It's been a brutal start to the season. It's stressful watching them play and blow a lead game after game after game. All of these things kind of give us a snowball effect. Our recovery takes place in what's called the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your body's ability, they call it the feed or breed or the rest and digest. And it lets your body simmer down, your heart rate comes down, your blood pressure comes down, your cortisol, which is your stress hormone, comes down, and allows your body to actually recover from a physical and chemical standpoint. So, end of the science lesson. We start with cadence breathing. How can we get our parasympathetic system to fire? We just had a stressful event. We just had an up and down as a referee in the middle of a 3 official system. We've been going for 4 or 5 minutes and finally got a whistle. How can I get things to ramp down? And cadence breathing is a common term for runners. It's also known as tempo running or tempo breathing. You breathe in every time your right foot hits the ground, and 3 steps later, you exhale out. That works to help maintain your breath control during endurance events. Cadence breathing to get your body into a parasympathetic state uses a little ratio down there. It's a 1 to 1 to 2 ratio. So however long you inhale, you hold for the same amount. And when you exhale, you double it. So there's a little example at the bottom. You breathe in through your nose for 4 seconds. You hold that breath in for 4 seconds. And then you try to exhale for 8. That's the hardest part of the whole thing. We're in such a rush when we're in that sympathetic state that we want to blow the air out so we can take the next breath right away. Just doing this for 3 or 4 minutes is enough to flip that system almost every single time to help ramp down your heart rate, get control back over your situation, and put your body in a position where it can recover. It's also a great way to fall asleep if you have an issue with sleeping at night. If you're laying in bed for more than 30 minutes, can't fall asleep, try a little bit of cadence breathing, and it will bring all of those markers down, and it's a great way to help you fall asleep. When we start looking at training for performance and how does recovery play into that, this is where we start getting into the nuts and bolts with it. We have to have a good balance between all the stressors in our life and the recovery. And down here on the bottom is just a little graphic that shows what happens in either a single physical exercise routine or over the course of, say, a 2-month training period. You have your before training or your before event, whatever your current level is. Training is a breakdown activity, and that's how your body adapts to get better. It says, I don't want to break down again, so let's make the muscle bigger, or let's improve our endurance, or let's make the changes that are needed to get us better. So there has to be a recovery to bring us back up to a balanced state, and then our body goes into what's called supercompensation. That's where the growth is. Growth and advancement is never a straight line from start to finish. It's always a little wave graph. You get a little better, you break it down. You get a little better, you break it down. And over the course of time, your highs are much higher than they were before. And your breakdowns, your performance is still elevated than it was a couple months before. Oops, excuse me. The recovery part of this routine is meant to maximize and prevent the negative effects of your workout. And there's a term on here called non-functional overreaching. This is where a lot of people that are avid workout individuals live. They've reached their maximum stress and they keep grinding it out. They don't listen to some indicators that we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes. They keep going, hey, one more workout, I'll feel better. One more workout, I'll feel better. Yep, you know what? We're short-staffed. I'll work 2 more games this weekend. You're constantly breaking down and you've reached the maximum stress load that your body can handle. You can't actually get through that recovery phase to where you adapt and improve. If you allow that to happen too long, you get into what's called overtraining syndrome, or just commonly known as overtraining. Now your body starts dealing with fatigue, depression sets in, your mood starts to depress, your performance goes down, your sharpness and your ability to, hey, recognize that's a penalty, get my arm up and make quick, decisive calls, all start to hurt. And if we allow this to continue, physical injuries and even just general illness gets to creep in. So if we don't allow for proper recovery, it's a pretty downward spiral of just, hey, let's hammer out another workout. Let's work another game. Let's try to keep pushing. At some point in time, you have to listen to your body and say, I need to take this weekend off. Yeah, it's a big tournament, but I haven't made a good call in 3 games. And the coaches are actually right when they're complaining about how bad my performance is. Maybe I should take a little bit of break and let my body recover so I can come back and give a better effort later on. And tired athletes cannot train or compete at their highest possible level, whether that's to work a single A game or whether that's to jump into a junior game and go put in a 2.5-hour performance. If you are not recovered, you will never be able to reach that potential that you trained so hard for. So we want to be able to take a look at what those recovery things tend to look like. Try to break it down to seven simple principles of recovery. Time rules all. Load specificity matters, monitoring recovery, not just training. We're going to talk a little bit about sleep and the truth of what it actually does, soft tissue massage and things that vibrate. And we're going to talk on nutrition just briefly. This is a very individual process. We all have what's called biochemical individuality. It's why somebody can smoke for 40 years and never get cancer, and somebody could smoke for 2 and develop lung cancer. Our own chemical makeup and how our body works determines how we adapt to these stressors. And nutrition is a big rabbit hole that we are not going to go down in this talk. We're just going to talk briefly about its importance in recovery. And then the final one here is my favorite phrase, active recovery. It's one of the best things that you'll be able to do to help maintain that year-long work effort and allow your body to self-heal during the process of all the stressors we put it under. So time rules all. First little point here I think is the most important. Recovery cannot be sped up. It can only be optimized. Your body has, and the third mark there, called its own innate intelligence, its own processes to be able to heal and to get better. All we can do is maximize that, get the proper rest, have the proper nutrition, eat the proper food to allow us to recover. If we take those basic steps, our body runs at its most optimal level to be able to get better. There is no quick fix when it comes to recovery. We just simply can't do it. And sometimes it's just better to skip that workout. And sometimes we have to be able to change the intensity of our workout. We may have a goal and plan, and we get to the gym that day, or we get to the rink and we're going to go work on some edge control, and we just feel flat. It's okay to cut that session low and say, hey, I need to listen to my body. I need to change my training volume. So training volume does not matter if it is not quality training volume. This is definitely an aspect of quality over quantity. And if I can increase the amount of quality I have in a short-term workout or a short-term physical effort, and I can match that with the proper recovery, I'm going to have more quality efforts over the course of time, and my development will actually be much better, as opposed to, well, I didn't do so great, or I'm lagging in speed and I want to change that, or whatever you're trying to strive for with some physical exertion. You need to make sure that you're pushing quality and not just grinding out volume over and over and over again. And recovery doesn't mean time off. It is better served as work performed in a different loading threshold. So what does that mean? I can still do work on my body, but the intensity may be much less. So instead of, I'm going to go do a HIIT workout, which stands for high intensity interval training, and I'm going to go get on my Peloton and I'm going to go do 45 minutes of intervals. Maybe I'm going to do a 30-minute low intensity ride and flush my legs out and work at a level that I'm not putting a hard tax on the body, and then go spend 15, 20 minutes stretching and doing some myofascial work. You're allowing your body to move and recover so that when you go hit that high intensity workout the next day or 2 days later, the quality of effort will be significantly better. So load specificity matters. The load is what is the stress to your body. And the physical stresses are not only loads that we need to be concerned about, it's everything else that we talked about that dives into that, the mental part, the emotional stress, everything that feeds in. You have to take that into account. And your workout design or your activity that you're trying to go for needs to take a look at all of that load that comes in. So if you know that there's a big tournament coming up at a holiday, but at work you have 4 presentations and a big sales pitch coming in 2 weeks before that, you're going to be at a high physical stress load from your outside factors diving in. So maybe lay off the workouts a little bit, make your workouts a little lower intensity, decrease your gain volume during that increased emotional load and stress that you're getting from outside factors, so that when you hit that big tournament weekend and you want to do a good performance and you have a lot of games, your body isn't broken down. You've allowed it to recover by changing the load within that workout that you do. And workout design, or your physical activity and how we design it, needs to look at all load that we put into it. And, I joke because I have a lot of CrossFit athletes that I see, and they're phenomenal, and I bust their chops about it all the time. Periodization of workout is king. It has been for decades, and it always will be. And what that means is you set a set time frame, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, where you're going to focus on something like, I need to build muscle mass, or I need to work on my muscular endurance. And then you have a recovery phase built into that for 1 to 3 or 4 weeks, depending upon how you build that program out. And then after I get that little recovery phase, boom, I'm going to go hit it hard again. Now I want to work on my power. I want to be able to put that new strength down on the ice and increase my stride efficiency and the power that I put in. Well, that's fine, but then you need a recovery phase. So you're working this little up and down pyramid all the way throughout your season. CrossFit works on the muscle confusion principle. And muscle confusion is awesome when you change periods in your workout. When you do it long term, your body can't adapt efficiently because you're not giving it a constant stimulus for a period of time for it to adapt to. You're constantly in breakdown mode. You're constantly pushing for time. You're constantly trying to hit PRs. I need to get this workout of the day done within this period of time, and you just never recover. And in my industry, I'm a sports-specific chiropractor. I probably see 75% of my patients are athletes of some kind. And if they don't get that break and rest, the overuse injuries that we see, 90% of them are preventable because you need to put enough recovery in or be able to get a little bit of periodization there. That's why we have to look at the loads that we put in and be a little specific about it. And you guys had a Zoom cast last year that kind of dug into that. How do I build my workout? What do I look into what I need to do? How do I get those aspects in? And it's really worth finding somebody in your local area, if you want to take this seriously, that can help you build a program to look at what your goals are for the next 3, 6, 12 months, and make sure that we're finding time to stay active, but worry about recovering and decreasing our load during that activity period. It's far more important that the big picture of your season plays into the role of the workouts that you're doing now, or the number of games that you're working. We kind of hit a situation with the pandemic where some of our officials were working 2, 3, 4 times the normal amount of games that they did seasons before, just because we needed to get bodies on the ice in some areas of the country. And Charlotte was one of them. And we have several officials that they've worked pretty much everything we have in town. They're very good. They're very talented. And going into this season, they're burned because there's just no recovery. They just kept pushing and grinding and pushing. So we took several of them at the start of the season and said, hey, let's look at the year. What's our goal? And we looked at their game volume, and we're ramping their game volume up and down to peak for certain tournaments or certain events. And that's something you can do on your own. Is, mood is the #1 indicator of lack of recovery. It's also the earliest indicator of overtraining. And if you're sitting there and that assignment comes from your sign, you're like, I just don't want to go to the rink that day. That's okay. Take a little bit of time off. Your body is telling you right now, you have not recovered well enough to be able to go out there. When you start losing that vigor or that luster for what you're doing, it's giving you an early indicator of, hey, I haven't managed myself well up to this point in the season. I need to make some changes so that I'm ready for the end of the year tournaments or the things that may be presented to you in your officiating opportunities this season. Monitoring recovery is actually becoming much more mainstream. There is so much technology out there that there's almost no excuse to look at your recovery. The Whoop is very important, WHOOP, if you haven't heard about it. It's a little monitoring device. It looks at your load on your body from a heart rate standpoint. It looks at your pulse ox, which is how much oxygen you're carrying through your blood. It should be in the high 90s always, unless there's a certain pathologies that cause them to drop down. It looks at your heart rate variability, which I'll get into in a minute. And it looks at your sleep. And it doesn't just look at your sleep time. It monitors what level or what stage of sleep you're in and gives you a gradient. Hey, look, you didn't get enough sleep. You didn't recover from that workout you just did. And it smacks it right in the middle of your face and says, you need to do a little bit less. Your work threshold and your stress threshold needs to be less, or you need to focus more on recovery today. I think it's a fantastic device. They've gotten, the last couple of updates have really made this a powerful device than what it was even a year ago. And every electronic device, whether it's your Apple Watch or your Fitbit, they're all starting to do this. Heck, even beds are starting to monitor this. If you've ever gotten a Sleep Number bed, if you get the Cadillac series, that thing monitors your heart rate variability, your sleep. It gives you a full analytic. A little creepy if you ask me that somebody's monitoring my sleep through AI and that information's there at any time, but it's another way to get there. It's becoming that important that we're finding ways to monitor this throughout. And the first bullet point there, I think, is by far the most important. Mood is the #1 indicator of proper recovery. There is a battery that's been put out since the 70s called the Profile Mood States, or the PALMS test. And this was put out and studied extensively at the University of Wisconsin with their swimmers. And if you've never been a swimmer, you've never had the pleasure of knowing a competitive swimmer, the volume they put in is absolutely ridiculous. And they use this profile mood state, which monitors 7 different aspects of your well-being. It's one of those tests where, hey, from 0 to 5, not at all to extremely, were you sad today? Were you tired? And it asks you these wonderful little questions. And when you grade it out, it will tell you how you're doing in all those regions. And what they found is athletes that were in optimal performance, their mood indicator, which is vigor on that test, was always high. And while they monitor these people throughout their training and throughout their season, all of a sudden, that vigor went upside down. It scored very low. It's called an inverted spike iceberg. And that indicated overtraining long before their performance metrics decreased, meaning their swim times hadn't dropped down yet. Their performance in the gym hadn't dropped down yet. Their mood indicated, you need to change my workout or my volume now, otherwise I'm headed towards that overtraining aspect. And they were able to radically change their training design based upon their athlete's mood, with a super high correlation and success rate of being able to keep these athletes healthy and keeping them moving. You can download a free copy of it at any time. It's all over the internet. The grading system's easy. There's even programs that you type it in, it gives you your score, and you just look at the little graph. And I think it's a wonderful idea. When I was in school, we were looking at doing a thesis on putting it to officials over the course of a season to be able to monitor, hey, what goes on over the course of a year with your profile mood states. Unfortunately, the school shot it down and we didn't get to go forward, but I think it would be a great opportunity through the course of an officiating season to test that once every 2 or 3 weeks and find out, how are you doing? And when that vigor or your mood is down, you need to take a look at that load on your body and either increase your recovery or decrease your volume, or a combination of both to try to be successful. And this is a direct correlation. As your training volume increases, so does your recovery. The more you push, the more you need to recover. And it doesn't matter if you're 18 years old or if you're 70 years old. There's studies out of New Zealand and Middle Tennessee State that are studying 70 and 80-year-olds with weight training. We're told that, oh, they can't build muscle, they can't come in. These people are doing powerlifting and gaining over the course of a year. And the number one variable that helped them was increased recovery time. It had nothing to do with their training metrics and their total load and how much they were going through. It's how much recovery did we give them? And even in that age demographic, they're still showing great improvement in their ability to build strength and their ability to build coordination. Plateauing and stagnation are indicators that we need increased recovery. What does that mean? While you're going through, and if you are a gym person and you're stuck and you're not getting the weight numbers up, or you can't push any harder on the bike and everything's just kind of staying flat, your body's telling you, I've reached that overstress point, that non-functional adaptation. You need to increase your recovery between sessions, or you need to change your workout load. And when you do that, that's where that super compensation from one of the first slides comes in, and it allows you to actually get better. Well, you have to monitor that. You have to be able to record what we're doing. And if we're recording our recovery, what am I doing sleep-wise? What am I doing for my resting heart rate? Am I starting to notice changes with that? So do I have a hard time getting to sleep, or am I falling asleep a lot easier? I just finished dinner, sit down on the couch, and I'm out. Your body's telling you, hey, I need more rest and recovery. Or I'm so ramped up and I'm so high in a sympathetic state, I can't turn it off and I can't fall asleep. Easy log, hey, I slept for 8 hours. If you're using one of those devices, you can actually see how much stage 4 REM or how much deep sleep you had for recovery. Resting heart rate is an average, best taken in the morning. When you first wake up, take your pulse for a minute, it's your resting heart rate. If you notice over the course of 2 or 3 weeks that number is higher and higher and higher, you're not recovering. Your body didn't get the recovery that it needed through sleep. It didn't get enough recovery through your training efforts, that you're still at a stress point and your body's just blown through it, which means you'll be at an elevated heart rate for almost the whole day. The number one metrics that I think, if you had to do one thing, is heart rate variability. And that's different than your resting heart rate. Heart rate variability is how much your heart rate changes over that minute. That whole sympathetic parasympathetic thing that keeps coming up is like a seesaw and tug of war in your body. They're constantly going back and forth. So if I took my pulse right now, it's sitting at maybe 80 beats per minute if I count for a full 60 seconds. However, if I'm overtrained or I didn't get enough recovery, throughout that minute, it might jump up to 120 and it might drop down to 70 and it might pop up to 160. You're seeing these spikes and pitches go up and down. That means that you are not at a good balance seat. Your body is basically saying, hey, I can't find a balance point. So I'm constantly stroking that sympathetic fight or flight to get my heart rate up. And then, no, I don't want to be there because there's no reason for it to be that high. So let me fire the parasympathetic system. Your body's fighting back and forth. When that happens, recovery is non-existent. Your body can't get in any consistent direction to allow you to recover. Heart rate variability can be monitored on pretty much any electronic device now. iWatch has them, Samsung has them, Whoop does it, Fitbit does it. It's a great indicator for health and how is my nervous system and is it healthy. We think it's so important. We monitor it in every one of our patients. It's an objective that we submit on their forms. Now, when they come in, we look at their heart rate variability. And when they finish their protocols with us, how has that changed? What is their nervous system doing? What is their overall health marker? It's a great thing for you to be able to do. Another way to monitor your recovery is how many recovery workouts and how long are your workouts. So are you purposely putting in that recovery? Some people, 15, 20 minutes on an off day is more than enough to allow their body to gear up for the next workout. Other people, they need to take 2 or 3 days and work on some of the things that are coming up on the next slide here to let our body get better. All right, the truth about sleep. So sleep is important. It's one of the most important variables in your recovery. That's when our body rebuilds. It's when it puts all the things to work, all of our nutrition. Hey, I need to repair those muscles that broke down. I need to be able to get my hormones balanced out. It is 100% the cornerstone of recovery. However, it is not a magic eraser. It doesn't make up for 4 or 5, 6 hard workouts in a row. It doesn't make up for grinding it out for 3 hard months of tons of games, working, traveling on the road, doing everything else. There's no catching up on lost sleep, which in my current state, after 8 weeks of a newborn, I really wish I could hit the sleep button for 24 hours and magically be better. You can't. There's no making up for lost time. So you can't just say, well, you know what, I'll just sleep a little bit longer today and I'm going to be much better. You have to do other active steps in there. Decreased sleep affects all areas of our performance. And it's not just the ability to go push harder or go skate faster. Decreased sleep is one of the #1 precursors for injury. People that don't get enough sleep have a much higher injury rate. Their strength and power production is significantly decreased. Their cognitive ability, their ability to think, is decreased. We talk about brain fog, and people that don't get enough sleep are kind of in a little fog and they're a little slow to kind of get answers out, or they're a little slow to put their arm up for that penalty that everybody saw. It really plays a big role in our ability to perform in general. And the research supports that better training leads to better sleep. Well, that doesn't mean work out harder. That means work out smarter, that if you program the appropriate amount of recovery, your sleep habits will automatically improve. The research is absolutely stacked on this, that if you periodize your work, all right, I'm going to go skate 9 games on the weekend because we need it. I'm going to increase my sleep during the week to try to be able to get ready for that. Almost without a doubt, your performance will be better that weekend working those games than it will be if you stayed up late, you didn't get the sleep recovery that you need, and you didn't manage your load volume throughout that week. A little bit about sleep hygiene. Kind of a sterile term, but it's actually what it's referred to when we look at quality of sleep and things that we can do to improve our sleep. And sleep-centered habits to improve not only the quality, but quantity and the latency of sleep. That's the definition of your sleep hygiene. If you have a hard time getting to sleep, blackout curtains are fantastic. You know, we live in a neighborhood, we have stupid little architectural lights on us that shine in our windows, and our bedroom always has bright lights. So what do? We get blackout curtains, we take that stimulus out. White noise, whether it's a little $25 baby white noise maker or a fan, that little bit of white noise drowns out a lot of distractions to help you fall asleep. Not eating too late. Common sense stuff that we've heard for a long time. Typically, you don't want to eat within 2.5 to 3 hours of your bedtime, because your body is trying to break that stuff down and it wants to stay awake to be able to clear your stomach of whatever you consume. Making the bedroom a hangout or a place where you watch TV, or if you're that person that you have to read for 30 or 45 minutes before you could fall asleep, you've trained your body that when I get to this place, I have to do other things before I can fall asleep. So changing your habits when you're in the bedroom will greatly increase your ability to fall asleep. So cut the TV out, cut the reading in there, do it before you get into the bed. And you can actually train your body that, hey, when I get in there, I turn the lights out, it's nap time. And you'll find that your sleep latency or your ability to fall asleep will improve drastically. So for the most part, the bedroom is only for sleep, right? And having a proper sleep-wake cycle. And that means you have a bedtime and you have a wake time. iPhone has had a wake indicator for probably 7 iterations of their phone now, which will allow you to be able to set a wake time. When you have that consistency, your body and their hormones will regulate to that cycle, making it easier to go through. Right? So everything else in there is pretty much explained with the limit afternoon caffeine. Usually most people have a 1 or 2 o'clock caffeine curfew, because caffeine, as long as you're not overexposed to it, has an effect on the body for 4 to 6 hours typically. So we want to be able to get a good caffeine curfew in there. Soft tissue massage and things that vibrate. What you're looking at is a picture of fascia. So you have a muscle fiber with all that stringy goo in there. So myofascial, myo meaning muscle tissue. Fascia is a 3D connective matrix. It kind of looks a little slimy like this. Its purpose is to allow tissues to slide. And not just tissues, but arteries, veins, nerves, so that they don't get bound up. And doing a little bit of myofascial work after a game, doing a little bit to warm up, goes a long way in your ability to recover, a long way in maintaining your flexibility and your body's ability to move through a range of motion. And there's tons of ways that we can do that. But the benefits of your myofascial work is to increase your lymphatic drainage. That's the system that removes fluids from your body. So nerves, arteries, and lymph. So we want to be able to get that swelling and that tissue fluid that's built up after exertion to get back out. It also helps with increased oxygenation and nutrient delivery to our body. It decreases muscle tension because the muscle's allowed to slide. When muscle tension goes down, stiffness and soreness tends to improve. Muscle tone, that's how tight is that muscle at rest. Your flexibility and the muscle's ability to be elastic, its ability to stretch, will improve drastically with just a little bit of myofascial work, improved active range of motion, and it helps promote healthy tissue healing. There's a ton of devices that can do it. I just have an example of a few up here. So if we start at the top, you have the shepherd's crook or a cane. This has been around for 30 years. It's a great way to get into what are called trigger points. And if you search trigger point on the internet, there'll be 4 million different definitions. Basically, it's a bit of muscle that's bound up in fascia and can't go back to rest. So it's this little hard nugget of joy that when you press on it, it's often sore. That's an area of overuse and injury where the fascia has gotten kind of sticky. The cane's a great way to be able to reach all those places in the back. You know, for people that work a lot of games and you're doing 10,000, 20,000 washouts in a season, you're gonna have a bunch of trigger points between your shoulder blades. This helps get that out. On the right-hand side is called the stick. It is the original. There's 5 million knockoffs on the internet. I think every referee should have one in their bag because you can get in and roll out the tissue. You can get the tissue warmed up very quickly. You can get that fascia to become stringy so that we slide nice and easy. And they're a fantastic tool. In the middle is called a peanut or a double across ball. It's a great little trigger point tool. You can get it in on your hip or you can get it on your back to be able to get into those trigger points and roll. Foam rolling is not new, but it's a great device. And foam rolling, the biggest issue that I see with most people that come into our practice is they buy a foam roller that looks like tire tread and it's as aggressive as can be and they wonder why they're sore. You want one that looks like a pool funyun. It's styrofoam, it's built firm enough that it's not going to break down, but it doesn't look like aggressive tire tread that's actually causing trauma to the tissue. And then in the bottom corner, we have a hypervolt. These vibration devices are everywhere now. I see them in the locker room every weekend I'm there. They're fantastic for warm-up. They are not a recovery device how they're pitched to be. And the reason I bring that up is you are causing trauma to the tissue. You are beating it up with a high frequency vibration, which does a great job of bringing blood flow in, bringing fluid in, loosening the fascia up. If you jump on a hypervolt after working 3 games and go run that up and down your quads where they're inflamed, you have fluid collection, you are actually going to make that worse short term. Give it an hour or 2 after the performance or after your workout, then jump on that thing and get the myofascial working. It's not meant for immediate use after exercise, even though every commercial shows it that way. The fun stuff, the save it for the professionals. And I guess it's a good time to mention, I'm not sponsored by any name you see on here. I think that the Normatec is a great device. They're compression devices that help get swung on the legs. They speed up recovery. You can buy them yourself. The reason I say leave it for a professional is if you don't understand what a blood clot looks like in your calf and you put this on, you're going to have a really bad trip. It's going to be a bad episode for you. So you need to be able to determine, is that sore muscle or am I dealing with a blood clot or am I dealing with something that needs to be addressed by a physician? So although I think they're fantastic, save it for the professionals. Instrument assisted tools, scraping. I'm Graston certified. I do a lot of tissue scraping for myofascial. The picture you're seeing here, that's not therapy, that's abuse. Some people think a little bit is good, so more is better. I have patients that after I do a little bit of tissue work with Graston, they go home with a darn butter knife and figure they can do it themselves and come back looking like this guy. And that's weeks for that to recover. So save those types of things. Cupping is the same type of thing. Make sure you have a professional do that so we understand what's enough abuse to the tissue to cause recovery and what's enough to create an injury so that we avoid going down that. But these are great things to find a local professional in your area to be able to help you out with your recovery. Nutrition. We're not going to dive far into this. Out of what's on this slide, the most important thing to take from it is in order for recovery to happen from nutrition, you have to supply the nutrients very quickly after the athletic event. And there's two ways to accomplish that. One is making sure that your pre-event meal, whether you're going to the gym or whether you're about to work a game, if you can consume a good, well-balanced meal 3.5 hours beforehand, roughly, it's going to digest to the point where it's not going to hamper your performance, meaning you're not going to have a bunch of blood in your stomach trying to break this down. However, it still has to go through your intestines and the rest of your digestive tract to absorb. So by the time you finish that 1.5-hour game, those nutrients are actually ready to deliver to help with your recovery. You didn't consume them to get through the workout event. You actually consumed them for them to be ready when you finish that competition. If you're like me, I can't eat 4 hours before anything because I have to work or I have to work out on an empty stomach. That's me personally. Some people can run to Taco Bell, throw down 4 tacos and go skate a game at full speed and not have a problem. Not the best choice, but as the example of some people can just eat and get exercise right away. The most common thing we can do is our post-competition meal. Usually this is going to be some type of shake, some type of well-balanced protein carbohydrate bar, something to digest quickly so that it can be delivered to the muscles and to our system to be able to recover. And the recovery process is meant to help minimize the risk of illness, injury, and most importantly, recover from what we're doing. And the downside of nutrition is it's become a highly marketable event, that there are a lot of things on the market that are pitched as recovery drinks or things that will help you recover. And then you look at the ingredients list and the first 4 ingredients are some type of sugar content, or the oils that are used in there are manufactured oils and not natural. So having a good pea-based protein, so it's a vegetarian protein, is a fantastic recovery tool because your whey proteins, your soy proteins, your casein proteins, which is milk-based, they're all pro-inflammatory in the GI tract in the body. And if you can go with a vegetarian-based shake or a protein, they're actually some that taste really good, and you can actually buy them at Costco and Sam's. So they're not overly expensive. They deliver great nutrients to the body without causing increased inflammation after some type of physical event, whether it's working a game or working out in the gym. You know, we just kind of have to look through some of the marketing a little bit on this. This is a huge, deep topic. I don't want to dive into, how many carbs to protein. And if I'm an hour or 2 hours out, you can really get in the weeds in this, and probably good for a conversation later on. It's something that BJ might be able to offer in a future Zoomcast to get into the nutrition and recovery or performance. But what I want you to take from this is you have to have nutrients on board immediately to maximize your recovery. The old, I'm going to go work out and let my metabolism rev up and I'm not going to eat for 4 hours so I burn more fat. Yeah, that might help, but you're significantly hampering your ability to recover from that workout. You're actually increasing the load on your body. So try to get something on board right away. The last slide we have here, it's my favorite. It's called active recovery. Like I said, recovery doesn't mean taking time off. It means down regulating your intensity levels. My NFL guys, when they got done playing on Sunday, they came in and saw me on Monday for a 2-hour workout. It was foam rolling, going through range of motion, basic yoga positions, really working on the tissue quality and getting that tissue to move again. We worked at heart rates where we weren't building up lactic acid to try to flush all those byproducts of that hard event that they just went through so they can jump in practice on Tuesday and start going again. And it's a critically important, easy thing that you can put into your daily regimen. So what does that consist of? If I had a hard workout today and tomorrow I want to do something for the sake of habit, but I want to do something that's going to allow me to push hard again. I want to do some type of myofascial work. I want to do some type of foam rolling, some type of use with the vibrocussor, some type of trigger point work. And I want to be able to work at a level that I'm not building lactic acid. I mean, you're not getting the muscle burn. Your heart rate is staying at a level where you can roughly carry on a conversation. that's going to allow me to push my body to recover so I can push hard again. And there's three types of our active recovery. One is post-effort, when I immediately finish. And when I spent 2 years with the Charlotte Knights, which is a AAA affiliate of the White Sox here, not a single pitcher was allowed to use ice post-effort. They went through a 45-minute active recovery session to flush out their shoulder. And their pitchers were able to go on 4 days rest as opposed to 5, because we're able to flush that out, get them ready, allow the nutrients to get in, allow that tissue to slide again before they ever got in the shower and they were done with their effort. Post-recovery effort, taking that little bit of time. You do not have to spend 45 minutes, but have a foam roller or a stick in your bag and spend 10, 15 minutes working myofascial, working a little stretch. Intra effort is what you do between your exercises. The microcycles is what we talked about with periodization, making sure that I have some active recovery. I've taken my workout load and decreased it for 1, 2, 3 weeks after a hard push of a couple weeks. All of those are great ways to allow your body to start recovering, so you have higher quality efforts moving forward. Low intensity to moderate duration, multi-joint activities, squats, lunges, pull downs, pull-ups, bench presses, push-ups. You're working your body as a system. You're not isolating a specific muscle group to break it down. You're teaching all that stuff to work together again. And then just decrease your load in your volume cycle. And it's a powerful, powerful tool that often gets overlooked. So please don't think that recovery means go take 4 days off. You should be doing something in that period of time. Hopefully we've maybe turned some light bulbs on and said, oh yeah, I could probably do this, or I wonder what that is over there, that you have some interest in some of these things, and that you at least understand that I have to be an active participant in my body's ability to get better. And that's not just the workout volume side, it's I have to consciously take an effort to work on my recovery. And for those of you that do that, your ability to perform at a higher level and to perform longer will significantly increase. I thank you for your time. I look forward for any questions you may have, and hopefully we can have a good chat on this.
Thanks, Cameron. That was an outstanding presentation filled with a lot of valuable knowledge that I hope everyone took in and are slowly kind of digesting their way through it. It certainly was an expansive. Just kind of going through and to kind of kick off the Q&A session, and just I'll throw a brief reminder out there. You can use that Q&A feature to all our live participants out there. You can use that Q&A feature in Zoom to pitch any questions to Cameron that might have popped up into your head. And I don't think they necessarily even have to be directly based on anything that he shared today. Obviously, he's got a wealth of knowledge in a lot of different areas when it comes to sport for performance. So anything that you can think that relates to you and yourself, and then basically a situation that you experienced, or maybe future planning of what you'd like to do to get a little better and improve your performance out there, or even just get through the grind of the season. I encourage everyone to throw those questions out there. You talked early on in the presentation, Cameron, about basically overtraining and basically the serious negative effects that can have on it. And one thing that kind of sparked off in my brain when I talk about long-term officiating development and basically developing as an official, I always basically kind of propose the model of, I think officials need stretch games and they need comfort zone games. So basically, if you're out there, basically going out there and you're constantly in a stretch mode, you're constantly going out there games that are really, really, really challenging you, you're probably not learning a whole heck of a lot, because you're just basically, as you talked about, basically you're in a constant state of stress, mentally trying to keep up, physically trying to keep up. How much can you really honestly be learning and getting out of that versus, would you agree with the idea of like basically going from a stretch game into a comfort zone game where you're not exerting yourself quite so much? Obviously, I would think that the recovery period doesn't necessarily have to be as long, but you're probably, more open from a mental capacity and a performance capacity to learn and develop.
Yeah, you described it perfectly. We think that I have to work the better game. I have to work the better game. I need that exposure. But when you're making that stretch into whether it's a different league or a different pace of play, there's a ton of physical stress to keep up. You're going to be under a lot of mental stress trying to keep up with the speed of change, or the different stressors that come from the coaches coming in or working with different partners and different schedulers. That you need to have games in there that they're not so much fluff games, but they're allowing you to be active. They're allowing you to skate. They're allowing you to build that repetition and your ability to read and react without having to constantly have a heavy load on you. And officials that are able to do that, that come down and work some lower levels or some slower paced games, you'll find that over the course of their career, their development will actually be faster. You know, you can't run full speed all day, every day, and expect something to happen. Eventually, you're going to blow a tire. So you have to come back down, process it. All right, I learned that at that level, that my golden triangle is not as strong as it should be, and I'm constantly getting pinched between play. And it was a great exposure to see this. But now I'm going to go work some slower levels, and I'm going to really work on those things that were highlighted that I need to get better on in a lower stress environment. And that's where that recovery and then that super saturation comes. Now you jump in that stretch game 2 weeks, month later, whatever it might be, and oh wow, yeah, that really worked. Now I'm much more efficient down here. It's one less stressor I have to worry about down low. And then you start picking off the next item that may pop up with that. It's a great way to work that load balance structure.
Okay. And sort of trying to maybe find balance within that world, even as it relates to rest and recovery, which you talked extensively about, you know, basically going out and say you have a really, really challenging weekend of like higher level games. Say you're working like upper level AAA hockey, and let's say you work, say 2 of those games back to back, and that really works you out versus say, and then maybe we'll break this up over a weekend. You know, day 1, you have that type of schedule, high level hockey, 2 games, AAA, really, really challenging, versus day 2, maybe lower level stuff, some AA hockey, maybe at the 14U level, not quite as challenging. Does the expectation, would you certainly need to accommodate for more rest during day 1 when you have that super challenging schedule versus the next day where you don't necessarily require much rest, or is it not that big of a difference?
No, I think you need that rest. And we see that at the national tournament structure. There's a reason people don't typically work back-to-back games, right? We want them to be able to go out, give a full effort, step out, decompress, get some good nutrients in, let the tissue recover, let the brain recover. And then later on down that day, a couple hours later, whatever it might be, now let's jump back in because I've had that micro recovery. I'm fresh. My reaction time will be better. My ability to process what's happening in front of me will be better. You need to have that increased span in there as opposed to, hey, I'm going to work at 10 o'clock in a 12:30 game, and I'm going to go beyond the ice for this long period of time. You're not going to be able to have that quality effort there. You have to have that breakup in the middle. Most people do. There's the random unicorn that can be able to get in there and do that without a problem, and we all love them when we work with them, but that's not the norm. You need to have that break in there, as opposed to if I'm going to go work 2 house league games with a younger official, I can go be on the ice for 3 hours and not worry too much about my performance dropping in quality.
Okay. Shifting from basically kind of the game schedule management and rest and recovery and things like that into more of like a world weight training type of focus and scope. Is there a difference? And I'm sort of a hobbyist gym rat. I guess that's how I describe myself. I basically work out, but I work out with really no purpose other than basically I work out religiously while I'm home so I can behave like I behave when I'm on the road. I can eat bad food. I can eat late at night. I can, basically go out and take care of our volunteers out there in the field and so forth. When I'm at home, I try to live a pretty simple, eat as clean as you can, work out 4 to 5 days a week. I'm kind of a hobbyist in that sense. Is there kind of a difference between working out with strength, like building strength, versus working out to build both bulk versus working out to build endurance? Is those 3 different types of focuses to have in mind, and 2 different or 3 different types of ways to structure your fitness towards those?
Yep, and those are really the 3 buckets that we tend to look at. If you want to put a 4th, it's developing power, which is speed versus time, or strength versus time, and how much we can put it out. And those workouts in and of themselves are different. If I'm trying to build mass, I'm trying to build muscle, you're typically working a heavier load, but for shorter duration. So you're lifting a heavier weight for less reps, so to speak. But in the micro session, you have a longer recovery between those sets, so you could push that heavy load again with quality. Whereas I'm trying to build muscular endurance or the endurance of the tissue, I'm going to be working a lighter weight at a higher repetition count with a decreased rest threshold in between there. So I'm trying to push my body's ability to adapt to be able to repeat that effort over and over and over again. And then strength falls kind of somewhere in the middle. And there's a whole wide variety of different envelopes that you can get in there, and how specific do you want to be with that. But It comes down to the amount of load that you're doing over that course of the session and what rest are you putting in between those sets to be able to drive that heavy load again if it's to break muscle, or I'm going to purposely shorten my rest between sets so that I can really try to push that heavier weight, or excuse me, push that lighter weight more and more to build my endurance. And there's set counts and repetition counts. Effectively, muscular endurance, it kind of falls in the realm of 12 to 15 repetitions. Some research says 15 to 20. And if you can get to 20, you're not really reaching enough physiological stress. You need to put a little bit more weight on. If you're comfortably getting to 50, if you can't get to 15, the weight's too heavy for what your goal is for that little micro session. If you're trying to really tear down muscle to build hypertrophy and growth, you're in a repetition range of 4 to 6. Some research says 6 to 8. And the same principle applies, but now we're using a heavier weight. If you can get to that 6 and you're like, well, I could do 2 or 3 more, the load is not heavy enough to get that response that you're shooting for. You're not doing enough breakdown to that tissue. So there's certain ways to get into that aspect, but yes, those requirements are different depending upon what the goal is. That's why monitoring is so important. What was my rep count? What weight did I do? What was my recovery? How did I feel at the end of all of that? So when I go back in the gym, like I said, I have a purpose. Now I know this is the weight I need to start at. All right, I made it. So I write my workout for the next visit. This needs to be up 10 pounds. This needs to be down 5 pounds. And you set that periodization up.
You already made it far more focused than anything that I ever do in there. I spend my first 30 minutes basically on the elliptical, basically trying to figure out what I'm going to do my rest of the time in the gym and trying to figure out what exactly. Well, I know I'm going to do a little bit of this, a little bit.
That's still advanced planning anyway. At least you're putting a thought in what do I want to do here. You just don't walk in and go, well, that machine's open. I'll go jump on that.
No, it's not quite that simplified, although sometimes it does boil down to that as well on a busy day. God knows I'm certainly not looking forward to January when all the New Year's resolutions kick in and suddenly the gym kicks into high gear and I can't find anything, any equipment or machines to use.
That's for sure.
You hear a lot about guys who are really dedicated to fitness and they go to the gym on a routine basis. They'll talk about like focusing on different parts of their bodies on different days. Is there a good reason for doing something like that? Does it play into, say, strength or bulk or endurance? Does it play into something like that? Or even just having a simple, like kind of all around routine method? Does that overall work for the average athlete who's just basically going in, just wants to get a little bit of strength and build up a little bit of strength and maintain body weight and things like that? And just for all around health.
Yeah, this is where you put 10 trainers in a room and you'll get 40 different answers. It all depends. It's the worst answer ever. For the average individual that is not looking to get hyper specific, big multi-joint movements 2 to 3 times a week will yield out better results over the course of time historically. So that means you're doing squats and lunges. You're not doing leg extensions for the quads and hamstring curls for the hamstring. Or what you alluded to, people will do a push-pull day. So today is going to be chest and tricep. Tomorrow's going to be back and bicep. The next day is going to be legs and shoulders because shoulders always get thrown with legs unless you have a 4th day. It's a different in philosophy. I think the research is pretty strong that multiple taxing muscle groups over the course of a week over a periodization will yield better results over time, which leads to much more of the multi-joint work and more of a workout that is geared for total body. However, if you have an injury or you have an area of deficiency, whether it's your grip strength or your back is disproportional to your front, which I see in my office all the time. We like to go to the gym and work the show me muscles, chest, bicep, quads, and the front of the shoulders, because that's what everybody sees walking at you, but nobody works stuff in the back. If you have deficiencies or biomechanical breakdowns, then the segmented workout of I'm going to do this today, but 2 days later, I'm going to work a different group might be more beneficial for that person because you can target your load to your weaknesses to start getting balanced. What you'll find at higher levels of competition, a lot of big time programs in college and a lot of big time NFL, NBA, NHL programs are working multi-joint work because that's how our body works. And that's where our functionality is. A bicep curl is great if you want to develop your bicep, but very rarely is that a functional movement for us. Just like people that sit and work on the quad machine, that's not going to functionally make you a better skater. In fact, it's going to create an imbalance between your quad's ability to work with your glutes. So I hate to answer it with this, but it depends. If I had to pick one, you should be working multi-joint multiple times throughout the week.
Okay. Yeah, and the only question, follow-up question to that is basically I just kind of question your math a little bit, because if I got 10 trainers in the room, I get 40 different answers. I'm kind of wondering why each of those trainers is changing their answer 4 different times every time I ask them. But
because they have to market and sell to the trend. That's usually why.
yeah, that's right. It's all about the Instagram accounts when you boil it down. Moving on from weight training and basically a little bit of gym time and all that. You went down the path a little bit about nutrition and stuff like that. And nutrition is definitely a topic that I do want to revisit, whether I have you back or I find another panelist, or I get a couple of panelists together and we just having a nice friendly conversation for the better part of 60 minutes. You know, when it comes down to meals, you talked a lot about post-game and post-game recovery meals and things like that. What should you be focusing towards in a pregame setting? Like you're basically say 2 to 3 hours out, you know, the puck's going down in 2 to 3 hours. You know, is it focusing on protein? Is it focusing on carbs? Is it focusing on, you know, those simple, easy to break down sugars and things like that? What should be your focus with that?
Yeah, looking at it from the refereeing standpoint, it's deemed an intermittent speed sport or an intermittent sprint sport is what officiating tends to break down to. If you're the official in the middle, might be a little bit more endurance based if it's 3 or 4 official, it depends upon the system. But in general, you need your consumption to match what your effort level is going to be. So there has to be a balance of carbohydrate and protein. You need to have the protein available to be able to help those muscles recover as you break them down during the event. But you have to have a good complex carbohydrate, not simple sugars. If we're talking 3-4 hours out, because you have time to digest them, you should be getting a good carbohydrate base to be able to have the sugar stores in your muscle that stored glucose to be able to push repetitively, whether it's up and down the ice for 20-minute periods or whether you're a lines person and it's sprint, stop, and getting between the lines. You have to be able to have a good carbohydrate push to fuel those muscles for that repetitive effort. So it's much more of a balanced diet. When we start getting in the window of, hey, I only have an hour, what do I need to do? Liquid-based protein with a carbohydrate push. So we don't want to go heavy protein with no carbs. Now you're a little bit more simple sugar, but you have to be careful that it's not a sugar-rich environment that you're going to crash afterwards. So that means there has to be some fiber content in there to slow the sugar absorption down. That's where pre-competition kind of comes in. Now, if you're going to be much more endurance-based and you're looking to you have 5 or 6 games that you're working in a short period of time, you need to be thinking further out that I need to increase my carbohydrate intake in the day to build those carbohydrate stores a little bit. The old marathon analogy of that spaghetti dinner beforehand doesn't really hold weight with the research. But if I do it early in that day, I can pick my sugar stores up in my tissue and my liver specifically so that they're ready to use over the course of that long haul of continuing to burn energy. And then you need to have good protein about 3 or 4 hours beforehand so it's ready to deliver while you push. So it just depends upon your window of eating and when you can get it in.
Okay. Moving from pregame into the game environment, a lot of our youth grassroots officials are out there working multiple games over the course of a day. What's the go-to in between game meal? What should we be focusing on there? I got basically 10 to 15 minutes in the locker room to chat with my buddies, grab a sip of water, need a snack before I go out there and work my next 60 to 90-minute game. What's the go-to?
There's a lot of gel-based recovery systems. You know, they were big for actual long-duration athletes, for triathletes, marathon runners, and long-distance bikers, that they've now changed that formulation. So you get a little bit of protein to help with some recovery. You get some good push of sugar, but we're not talking high fructose corn sugar. You're getting enough to replenish those blood stores to get ready to push. I really like a lot of the gel-based products that are out there. The problem is they can be a little pricey. So if we're looking to be a little bit more economical, having a kind bar, having something like a good Cliff bar, and then we have a good liquid protein to get in there to break that process up. It tends to work better in that recovery. It needs to be something that you can eat. It needs to be something that's not going to sit in your stomach a long time, because if it does, you're pulling blood from your legs and your extremities to your stomach to digest it. You need to be a little bit more liquid based, or some of those quick ready to eat bars. Kind bars are a fantastic mix. You just have to watch your product. What I don't want to see is that official pulling out that mega protein bar that's 40 grams of protein bomb, and they're going to go put that thing in their stomach and then wonder why they're dragging butt 15 of the 20 minutes of that period coming up. So it should be, again, balanced but easy to digest.
Okay. How about the tried and true peanut butter and jelly sandwich? Does that work?
Can't go wrong with it. Just don't have the chocolate milk with it. That doesn't end well. But peanut butter and jelly sandwich, a little bit of watered down orange juice works well. If you're going to go with your Powerades and those types of things, cut them in half by water. So you have half of that container. You're cutting the sugar content down so you don't crash. You're still getting the electrolytes that they put in them, but you're balancing out the negative effect of the high sugar in them. So it's another option to be able to go with. But PB&J works too.
Okay. One of our guests out there in Zoomcast world basically asked a pretty interesting question. What are some of the better tasting brands of vegetable protein drinks? I'm sure you've tried all of them. So
yeah, it's funny, right? What works well, and you had to ask, and I'm terrible with names, so I could probably run to the kitchen and grab some. One company that works well is called Ancient Nutrition. Dr. Axe has actually come up with it. They have a vegetarian-based line, but they also have a bone broth-based line, high collagen base, and they make a fantastic product that is non-inflammatory. So I would look towards their vegetarian base. And if you run Costco.com and type in vegetarian protein, they sell one product and one product only, and the name eludes me right now. The stuff blends very easy, and it doesn't taste like you're going outside and licking the front yard. It really does. It's palatable. It works well.
Good to know. Okay. Just one more round of questions here. And basically, you shared a wealth of knowledge, and you've kind of dropped a few product names and stuff like that. Obviously, there are lots of different resources out there to consult when you basically want to go down the road of building fitness, building health, building wellness, and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, as you're going down that road, what would be your recommended areas to look for this type of information versus the pitfalls, the traps?
So if you're looking for tried and true resources to find out more information, the NSCA, National Strength and Conditioning Association, their home office is right next to where you're at. They are one of the leading researchers in health and fitness specific to performance. They do a wonderful job of giving information out. They have a lot of free content. If you really want to dive into it, their research is accessible at no charge. They have a lot of good information to come in. And if you're looking for a local resource, you should find somebody that is CSCS certified, Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist. That's the top certification level with them. They have to have a 4-year degree in exercise science just to sit for the test. So they do have a wealth of knowledge to help you. The ACSM, the American College of Sports Medicine, is another great resource to be able to look at for this. If you're trying to find a practitioner for how do I get this myofascial stuff to work, ART, active release technique, ironically enough, also in Colorado Springs, at Champion Performance is where their location is. They are the gold standard for myofascial release. They have been forever. So finding an ART provider in your area can really give you a wealth of knowledge on how do I work this tissue. You don't need to see them every time. It's learning how to move your body against a foam roller or against one of those peanuts to be able to work that myofascial release. So those are 3 resources right away I'd go look for.
Okay. Excellent to know. And based on those locations of those places you talked about, it sounds like I need to get out more. So when you're and on top of those types of things, obviously there's things you want to look for, those little markings, those little acronyms and stuff like that you want to look for to basically find that credibility in the source that you're looking at. Obviously, social media, YouTube, and all that kind of stuff. There's no shortage of people who would love to basically share their information and basically proclaim themselves as experts out there in the field. Where does that balance kind of tip of when to listen versus when to start asking questions and maybe get a little skeptical about what you're hearing?
I think you have to be skeptical with 90% of it, because the health and wellness world is all about how much spin can I put on something to make myself interesting. The joke in the 90s was one day eggs were good for you, the next day it wasn't because it sold more magazines. Now in the social media world, everybody is a self-proclaimed expert of something. So we fall into this trap with patients all the time. How can I know what to believe? Part of it's finding a local provider or a local professional that you can bounce ideas off of. And they're worth their weight in salt when they're not afraid to have conversations with you without putting a dollar sign in front of it. People that really know what they're doing provide free content, and they provide quality free content. And you can tell that because they're listing, hey, you should do these 5 things for better hip health. Here's where the information came from. Here's how we came to this. It's not just, I learned this from my trainer, and I want to try to get TikTok hits, so I'm going to do a silly dance and do 5 exercises. The quality tends to shine through in the health and fitness world, and I won't say scam, but fraud tends to show itself pretty easy. If it seems too good to be true, don't pull out your pocketbook and go buy it. If it's like, wow, I can really do these 4 things and everything is going to be magically better, they probably are just trying to get your attention for that 30 seconds. Real quality providers, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, they all have a wealth of free information that they don't mind sharing with you because they know their stuff and they're that good that they're not worried about their information getting out of there. So kind of look for the volume of content from them.
So bottom line is what you're saying is basically if their advice includes the terminology, smash that like button, then you probably shouldn't be following along with what they recommend.
Yep. Subscribe, smash it, and donate some stars while you're at it. They're probably not the people you want to chat with.
Good to know. Okay. With that, we'll start to get around to the wrap-up part of this session. Any final words or comments or thoughts, Cameron, before we wrap this thing off and get on with our week?
Yeah, I hope the people that listen to this, whether on recording or live, I hope it brings some questions up. Hey, these are little things that I can do that make big differences. And whether your aspiration is to move up from working the C League for men's to the B League, or whether you want to try to make it to a USA hockey camp, you need to be an active participant in your recovery as well as your performance training. And those that do that, it's not just going to change your ability to be an official. You're going to be more efficient at work. You're going to be a better dad, or mom. All those aspects, your stress control will improve in all areas of your life. So try to find a little bit of things to move forward. And I actually just read a book called Atomic Habits and really like it, very well written. And they brought up an interesting fact that if you just try to be 1% better tomorrow and every single day over the course of the year, that's a 36x return after a full year. That's a huge return on a very small investment every day. So don't bite off the apple all at once. Small little incremental changes to what you're doing and the cumulative effect will be huge. So I just hope that today you start taking one step forward tomorrow.
Okay, thanks, Cameron. Really, really good advice. With that, we'll wrap up. And just one quick housekeeping note. Cameron basically alluded to a Zoomcast episode that we did during last season. And just to reference that, that's episode number 46, entitled Grassroots Fitness, where the panelist was Amanda Tassoni, who is one of our top developing female referees out from the Rhode Island area. She's built an extensively successful career for herself within NCAA Division I women's hockey, as well as the IHF. She's having a really good run with that. Just recently worked the senior women's world championship this past summer. So feel free to go check out that episode. As a reminder, of course, all of our Zoomcast episodes, if you go to usahockey.com, hover over the officials tab and wait for that familiar drop-down menu, go to the Zoomcast site and you'll find all of our upcoming episodes, as well as all the past episodes that we've had, all viewable on demand. And with that frame of mind, looking ahead to the upcoming schedule, sharing what we got coming up. As you can see, this week we're doing health and fitness. And then in 2 weeks' time, we come back with playing role Q&A. Matt Leaf is going to be in the captain's chair for that episode. We did one episode with that last season. And basically, it's your opportunity as a live participant to basically ask those kind of interesting questions, gain knowledge about rule interpretations. And Matt's going to share some information and some insight with the playing rules themselves, where officials sometimes fall into traps and where some ambiguity lies with our playing rules and the interpretations. But a great opportunity to ask not only Matt Leaf, but also the panel that will be joining them, your questions as it relates to the playing rules and their interpretations. 2 weeks after that, in December 20th, we have our next You Make the Call episode. We did one a couple weeks ago. It's always a cult classic and a fan favorite amongst all the Zoomcasters out there, where we present video clips to you and then use that polling feature within Zoomcast to poll the audience of what they think the proper call should be. Once that's done, we share the results, and then our panelists will basically break down the clips. Interesting point with that one, as our newest hire within the USA Hockey National Office staff, Billy Hancock, it'll be his first time as a Zoomcast host. So feel free to join that particular episode and watch him go out there and basically knock it out of the park in his rookie episode. Coming back after the first of the year, we have Officiating Fundamentals. Note that fun is basically underlined within that topic episode. We're going to have a really special guest with that one, Heather Mannix, who is one of our player development specialists within the Player Development Committee of USA Hockey. where she came to USA Hockey from, and where she's done extensive research is basically sport itself, sport managed sports governments, and basically how do we keep sport fun for our young athletes. And it started with basically the efforts that are being done at the 8U level, and where Matt Leaf and myself and Dave LeBout, our national referee in chief, kind of challenged her was basically with a little bit of educating from our part of basically how the officiating program works. She started to apply her principles of fundamentals of how can we make officiating education fun. So definitely join us on January 3rd for that episode. As you can see from the menu over there on the right side of that slide there, feel free to check us out on social media. We have our Twitter feed and our Instagram feed as it relates to the officiating program. Basically updates and information as it relates to the officiating program. At the same time, we retweet and share information from our various other channels out there, like the main USA Hockey site and so forth. Just as a quick reminder, for those in the live audience, once this episode concludes, you'll get an email invitation basically asking you to do a quick brief survey of what you thought this episode was like. The things you liked about it, the things you thought we could do a little bit better. Then, of course, that one question where we ask you, propose a Zoomcast topic. As we go through this, and we're 62 episodes into this, we're always looking for new ideas of topics that we can basically attack as a Zoomcast team, and basically make it better for you, our participant and our member, and hopefully enjoy, coming back for more Zoomcasts within the future. And then, of course, you as a participant, if it's the first time you've ever joined us for one of these Zoomcasts, welcome. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope to see you for many, many more. And if you're one of our tried and true cult classic fans out there have joined us for all 62 of these episodes, and we do know who you are, thank you so much for your dedication and support week in and week out, and supporting us through the 3 seasons that we've done so far. Lastly, thanks to our panelist, Cameron Gentile. Thank you so much for joining us for this hour and basically giving your expert wisdom and knowledge. And between basically the long grind of the USA Hockey season and, of course, the challenges of being a new father, to ask you to take another hour out of your life and dedicate it to USA Hockey, it really means a lot to us that you could basically join us and share your knowledge with us so much. With that, it's basically, this is it for me through the end of the year. I won't be back until late January. So wishing everybody out there in Zoomcast land a safe and warm and happy holiday through Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. And I'll see you basically sometime around mid-January when I return to the captain's seat. So enjoy your holidays, enjoy all your games, and good luck with all your tournaments going through the holiday season. And lastly, on behalf of USA Hockey and the officiating program, thank you for your dedication to USA Hockey.